it's funny when you're in sales, you're always trying to think of like the perfect thing to say, right? And sales is not about saying anything really. It's about genuinely caring and listening to
Hmm.
in front of you, because you're not going to solve anything or provide them any value or impact if you're not closing your mouth and just listening to what their needs are.
Hey, what's going on? You're now here with Lionel Mosby Jr. and the Lion and the Lambo podcast. Of course, you can find us on any streaming platform, whatever you like to listen to your streams to. And also, if you want to get the visual experience, you can catch us over at youtube.com. And I'm here today with Mr. Shane Arnott. How you doing today, sir? How's your week been going so far?
So far, I've been off to a great start, Lionel. I appreciate you having me this afternoon.
That's awesome, man. I'm so excited to have a chance to jump on the podcast with you, and just to hear a little bit more about your story. I know God has always leads and guides us and directs us, right? But I know that He has definitely done some miraculous things, in many of our lives, and so I'm excited to hear how He's led you. I mean, your life and also in your business pursuits. And so I always just start off by asking this question to every guest that comes on, and I was going to ask it to you as well, right? If you had to say, okay, one thing, just choose one thing, or one way, right, that you have been, or what is your biggest win, right, as an entrepreneur to date? What would you say that biggest win has been for you?
Having the privilege to continually serve others.
Mm, okay.
Yep.
Having the privilege. Gotcha. Uh-huh.
Yeah, for as long as I've been able to, having the privilege
Hmm.
to continually serve others. Absolutely.
Wow, that's awesome. What is it? And even when you say that, was when you first began, right, in
Mhm.
your entrepreneur journey, did you did you first enter in with the understanding that this thing that I'm doing is for the purpose of serving other individuals, or was that something that evolved and you saw it more and more as you kind of transitioned through what God was calling you to do?
It was definitely a transition. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Um, so to kind of preface how my journey began, my previous career, I was in law enforcement for about 16 years. And I had a side business where I was a broker and I did like power sports and I sold
Okay.
vehicles and stuff like that. And I'll be straight up, the reason I did that was to just supplement income, you know. And it was something I enjoyed. I enjoy vehicles. I enjoy older vehicles, power sports, boats, wave runners, all that stuff.
Okay.
Um, so it was kind of like a hobby that became a business, and it was my first foray, if you will, into being an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Uh, but as things progressed, as life typically does, I came across the unique opportunity. I was rediscovering my health. I was rediscovering my way and taking care of myself, both physically, mentally and spiritually,
Hmm.
all at different stages. Um, and just being athletic as
Hmm.
I was in my younger years, I rediscovered, that avenue, and I really enjoyed it, and I embraced it, and
Hmm.
others embraced what I was doing, so I just began helping. I just giving tips and coaching a little bit here and there, and just being uh, a resource, a voice of reason. And one thing led to another, and I started taking on clients, started training people, entered into the gym setting and doing it that way.
Hmm.
Um, Became a membership director for a big box gym. So I was doing that for some time. And to the point where I actually moved completely away from, the vehicle side of things. And I just kind of like completely dived into helping others lead healthier lives. Uh,
Hmm.
so it was kind of an interesting journey, and I'm really like shortening it down and giving the Reader's Digest version. Um, I still stayed involved with law enforcement because I became a
Hmm.
criminal justice instructor out of college. Um,
Hmm.
So I continued to do that with, young people that were venturing into the field. So to me, that was being able to give back based on my years of experience. And then I discovered CrossFit. And when I discovered CrossFit, I just drank the Kool-Aid and I was all in. It was over with.
Drink the Kool-Aid of CrossFit.
Yeah, it was all over. I mean, and what was interesting about it was the first time I tried CrossFit, I mean, it literally destroyed me. I thought I was in shape, and it literally destroyed me. And I was like, there is no way that just happened.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay. Yeah. If there's anybody to understand, I understand.
So, it was an interesting dynamic, really, just, being able to serve others in the health and fitness realm, not so much be a quote unquote, gym rat, but to lead a healthier lifestyle outside the confines of the gym. Yeah. I mean, just that's kind of the short, sweet version of it.
Right. Yeah. And if somebody came and asked you, Shane, what do you do? Right. I mean, how would you describe yourself today? And kind of what you do and how you help people? Because I know you do multiple things. Right. So how would you describe yourself?
I'm a coach, literally, and what I feel is the purest sense of the word. I can help people with their health and fitness ventures. I've been doing business coaching since 2016, since I became exposed to that. I fell in love with being able to coach other young entrepreneurs getting into, whatever their,
right.
lane of, excellence that they're in. And I found a niche in sales. Oddly enough, it was really crazy because sales to me was a very it's kind of like an off topic. I didn't enjoy sales, and most people don't when they're initially exposed to it. And I was always that guy. If I went onto an auto lot, or if I went somewhere and somebody just came out and they just they kind of feel like they're accosting you, and you just want to be left alone and you want to look and see. And at the end of the day, when salespeople are doing such a thing, they're genuinely, for the most part, trying to help you, to serve you, and to get you to make a good choice. It's a noble and honorable position that is often overlooked. That probably sounds strange to a lot of people, but I got involved with that. I really started to excel with that, and I didn't expect to at all. I really just wasn't on my radar. But I thought it was important to look at it from a different perspective. I saw selling from a genuine point of view as serving someone, right? And helping them make an informed decision that would create some kind of value or impact in the realm of what they were looking for. And that kind of turned a corner for me. Yeah, it changed my opinion entirely about sales altogether. And now I've worked with several, 100 people on their sales skills and acumen and whatnot. And I just really enjoy helping. It's funny when you're in sales, you're always trying to think of like the perfect thing to say, right? And sales is not about saying anything really. It's about genuinely caring and listening in front of you, because you're not going to solve anything or provide them any value or impact if you're not closing your mouth and just listening to what their needs are. Yeah, it was a very interesting transition for me. Didn't expect.
Wow, that's interesting. So you said you helped several hundred people, right? With the sales side, how many people do you think you've kind of impacted on the actual lifestyle side of things and help with their physical, needs?
Thousands, easy.
So thousands physically, right? Hundreds, with the sales. So I want to ask you this question now, right?
Sure.
which one do you love more? Okay, you got to choose one,
Okay,
right?
I got to choose one.
You got to
Um,
choose one.
Honestly, it's going to be the lifestyle. Uh,
Okay, why is that?
because,
Why you choose the lifestyle?
well, anything that you can do to help keep a loved one around for years to come
Okay.
has greater value and impact than anything that you can sell a person. So
Mm,
at the heart of everything that I truly enjoy doing, my heart still resides there because there's several tentacles that come off of that.
mm-hmm.
I mean, in the coaching that I do, there's the physical part, there's a nutritional part, but I mean, you're a counselor as well, so I mean, there becomes
That's true.
there comes the relational part. There's the spiritual part. When those opportunities present themselves, you're not serving that person that's sitting in front of
Mm,
you if you don't walk with them, if you don't step with them, right? So without question, it's always going to be the lifestyle
mm,
coaching and all of that that takes precedence.
gotcha. Yeah, and that impacts so many areas of our life, right? You know what I mean? From, how we can function, mentally even, right?
Mhm.
How well we'll do in sales, for example, right? You know what I mean? If our physical bodies aren't taken care of, right? If we aren't healthy, if we're sick, if our bodies aren't able to, push through, it's gonna affect us in every other area of life anyway, right? And so it is super, super important. But I want to kind of go back, right, and kind of dive a little deeper, right, into the story of your growth to get to the point to where you're impacting thousands of people, right, to change, what they were going through from a physical standpoint, right, to even impact people, right, from a sales side, and say, okay, you first started, you were in law enforcement,
Yep.
you kind of started this side hustle. What was it that really made you launch into now saying, okay, I'm going to take my health more seriously? Because many times we think, my dad was in the force as well, right?
Mhm.
And I can remember him during that time. And a lot of times he was out there with us, coaching us, playing basketball, things like that, right? So, what was it for you as you were kind of going through that part of your life that made you say, man, Shane, like I got to take first of all, my health more seriously.
Yes.
What was it that kind of caused that to be such a major focus? So much so that now other people said, "Man, can you help me as well?"
Um, I had my eyes opened.
Mm,
It was literally a situation where I was in a place in my life where I wasn't taking care of myself. So basically, when I got into law enforcement, I believe I was in my mid 20s, early to mid 20s.
okay,
I was, same height I am obviously now. I was 5'10", I was about 175, 180 pounds.
okay.
I enjoyed running. I absolutely loved it. Um,
Oh wow, that's not my favorite activity. Okay.
no, and it's not mine. It's not mine today, let me tell you. But within 3 years of getting into the law enforcement profession, I went from like 175 pounds to almost 250, 260. And,
Okay.
you know, a lot of people will say this phrase, you've probably heard it yourself, life happened, which is one of the biggest lies we can tell ourselves.
Mm,
I mean, without question, one of the biggest lies we can tell ourselves. So it was kind of a situation where I was working shift work. When I wasn't working, I was in court. When I wasn't in court, I was in training. When I wasn't in training, I was sleeping, and I didn't feel like I had time to take care of myself.
okay.
And I did. I truly did. But I used that time in other endeavors. So eating the wrong things. There was the drinking that, I was already a social drinker, but it kind of escalated as a mechanism to cope with things that I've seen.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I kind of spiraled out of control for quite a period of time, and then uh, one day it was a Sunday, as a matter of fact, I was working a day shift, and I was sitting in my patrol car. Nothing exciting had happened. It wasn't a CSI day by no stretch of the imagination. And I was just taking an alarm report, and I was just sitting there by myself. And I was just having problems breathing. I was short of breath, and vision would just like get blurry. Then it would clear up, and I didn't really think nothing of it. I wore a bulletproof vest. I loosened it up a little bit, and I went back to writing my report. And it didn't get any better. So I drove 2 blocks up the street to where a friend of mine who was an EMT had him check my blood pressure because I was already like on blood pressure medication at this point in my life. I was not even 30 years old, and I was probably taking 3 or 4 medications.
Mercy.
And he took my blood pressure, and it was like 180 over 120.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so I was in stroke territory basically. And they put me out of service, told me that I wasn't working the rest of the day, put me in the ambulance. They took me to the emergency room. So when I got there, on the way, they called my wife. She was on the way. And when I got there, they wheeled me back. They gave me a nitroglycerin tablet, which opens and expands your blood vessels so your blood pressure can come down. And it was interesting because once they gave that to me, it was almost like my hearing was starting to fade. Everything was getting quieter, and then I was getting tunnel vision. And the last thing I remember is my wife had actually arrived, and she turned the corner and walked into the room where I was at, and I crashed right there in the ER, in the emergency room. When I woke up, I was kind of like upside down in the gurney. You know, they were getting blood to go to my head and my upper extremities, and I was sweating. I was pouring in sweat. So that was a wake up call for me. Like, you need to start taking care of yourself again. This has never been you. This is not what you were about. So I did. That I listened intently to what that message was saying.
Wow.
And got myself back in shape. So I set a few goals for myself to, get back down to around 200 pounds or less. And, I wanted to try out for the SWAT team and the narcotics team. And I was able to get all 3 of my goals done in about a year.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And from that point forward, I mean, things kind of snowballed, and, some other things in life changed as far as like moving from one place to another. And then, I discovered CrossFit, and here I was thinking I was back in shape, and literally discovered that I wasn't in shape, so to speak. I looked good, but, the masculine endurance wasn't exactly what it was supposed to be.
Let me tell you, the first time I did CrossFit, I left out the gym, and I literally sat in my car for 30 minutes talking to God, telling him I don't need a 6-pack to get into heaven. Like, that was my literal conversation with God. Like, I don't need a 6-pack to get into heaven. Like, why am I doing this? Right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But
no, I totally get it. I was one of those people, and I am to a degree today, not so much today as I used to be. But when, I discovered that I struggled with something, it was like, okay, now I gotta try to figure out
challenge.
How do I overcome that? Right.
Yes.
How do I get better? So, one thing led to another, and ended up opening up my own CrossFit gym, which I ran and owned for 12 years. We were very blessed. We opened up it started off in a 1-car garage, and we ended up in an 8,000 square foot building because our membership grew.
Wow.
Exponentially.
That's huge growth.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was fantastic. Some of the memories that were made there were very formative, as far as an entrepreneur, but just as a person, as a confidant, as a mentor, as a coach. Just incredible memories with great people. One of the things I love about CrossFit so much more than the training methodology, is just the community. It's interesting. It's the one community that I always thought church should be like. And here's the reason.
Okay, you got to break that down a little bit.
Okay. And the reason behind that is this. Just based on my experience alone, it was such diverse demographic of people from all walks of life, all cultural backgrounds, all professional backgrounds, there were doctors, there were construction workers, there were, general contractors and nurses and lawyers
Mm-hmm.
and students, and, just such a broad, and everybody was there for the same reason, sweating next to each other, cheering each other on, picking each other up and walking with them, and
Yes.
making sure they're okay, and genuinely caring about the other person's success in the
Yes.
pursuit of an endeavor. And I was floored by that. And the mere fact
Mm.
that we could foster that for as long as we did, it just testament to the community, which
Yeah.
it surrounds CrossFit, which was amazing. Um, that's genuinely what I loved about it.
Yeah. That's very true. When I think about the times when I was going to CrossFit, and it makes you think about the founders when they first originated it. Was
Mm,
this a part of the cultural? Um, was this one of the core tenets, right, of the culture they wanted to establish? Because it
mhm.
seems like it was, because it is kind of seemed very intentional, and it's with different. I've been to different gyms, right,
Mhm.
CrossFit
Oh yeah.
gyms, and I still feel that same, you know, togetherness, right? Like, hey, we are in this together, whether you're a beginner or somebody who's been doing it forever, right? It still feels as if it's one. And I love how you say, yeah, this is what the church should be, right? It should be this, that we all have one goal, one mission. It's a togetherness. And that's the beautiful thing, man. And
Mhm.
I know the Lord is doing that in many places, right? And I know He's continually making more places like that, right? And hopefully we can be a part of those. So I know that you were going on this journey, right? Through building this gym, connecting with so many people, right? But then I know recently, for a lot of people, we had the pandemic that hit, and that caused a lot of businesses to start having issues, right? Especially people wanting to meet in person,
Mhm.
and things like that. How did that affect you from that standpoint? In terms of the individuals that were now coming to the gym, and you built this big gym, were you guys affected by that at all?
Absolutely. It was interesting because, we shut down in March of 2020. And
Okay.
originally it was supposed to be a 2-week shutdown. Of course, we know how that, just kept
Yeah.
snowballing. So we were shut down from March of 2020 until the end of September of that same year.
Mm.
So, you know,
And
it,
where you located?
Washington State.
So okay, all right, got you.
Yep. So, like most good business people or most entrepreneurs, they have savings, they have operating expenses in reserve in just case anything
Yeah.
happens. And we were no different. However, as we got into the month of August going into September, I was sitting there going, well, things are getting lean. Things are getting real lean because we had a large group of members. I mean, we had anywhere between 250 to 300 members,
Hmm.
and you know everybody stayed for as long as they could to just support the gym, right? And then eventually people just started falling off, and they're like, I got my own things. This is a luxury item for me right now. I'm sorry, but we can no longer support the gym. We got to fall off.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people have things. They have their own things, and I would legitimately have people that would call me crying because they were going to cancel their membership. I'm like, it's fine. You have to do. Everybody has to do what they need to do at this point in time. I'm grateful that you were here for the time that you were, and I hope to see
Mm.
you back when we open back up. And we went from 250 members, 265,
Mm.
somewhere in that range, to about 48.
Mm.
Yeah. Like we lost a lot of people in like the last month and a half, 2 months of that whole shutdown. And then when
Gotcha.
we opened up, we were only allowed to open up underneath certain, you know, protocols.
Restrictions and guidelines. Yeah.
Yeah. So that didn't go very well. We got through the rest of the year into the first of the year, and things started picking back up a little bit. People started venturing back out, coming back out, but it was never like it once was.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting enough that in 2019 I was trying to put together an online component to our training. so that we could reach more people, instead of local or hyper local, we could reach them wherever they're at. Because we had some really successful programs that helped a lot of people. So we're like, how do we bring this to more people? How do we do this, on a larger scale? So during the time we were shut down, I had a lot of time to go through and kind of refine that process and see what that looked like. And that became the beginnings of the online program. And during the pandemic, that took off because that's what people were looking for,
Yeah.
So we were we were able to pivot into that space, and it literally took off. We were starting to 2x, 3x, 4x what the brick and mortar gym was making, just in an online format, and it was amazing.
Wow.
And that's what sustained us. That's what kept us going. And then ultimately, it just came down to not a lot of people were coming back. People were still afraid to come back, to the gym. And we just weren't building back up to the point where we were, where the online business was flourishing and taking off. We had to make a decision and say, okay, this thing doesn't want to live anymore. And through our best efforts, it doesn't want to continue on. But this thing wants to take off and fly. What do we need to do? So we really made a very difficult decision to shut the gym down, which was a very emotional experience. There was
I can see that.
Yeah, there was a lot tied up there. That was it wasn't a monetary thing, and it wasn't anything like it was just the relationships, the community that was built, the standing that we had in the community to be able to give back. Yeah, it was rough, but through tribulation we grow, right?
Right.
So now
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, because that's a very difficult thing, I feel, for entrepreneurs to do, right? Yeah. You've built this one thing this one way, right? Yeah. You've been on this specific path for however long. You love it this way. You're excited because it has gotten to this specific point, but then something happens. And in this situation, it was a pandemic or whatever, right? That had caused it to, laws change. You got to do something different. You know what I mean? It could be other things in other ways, right? There could be something not even federal. Maybe there's a local law that changes, right? That can cause something to be different. Or maybe clientele changes their thought process on the way they want to go about this specific thing, right? So there's so many things that happen in business, right? That it causes us to be at a point to where we can survive, but we have to pivot, right? Yeah. And I guess I want to maybe have you kind of speak toward the mindset that you were having during that period of time, right? Because I feel like a lot of us as entrepreneurs have these babies that we're growing. We put in years of work to grow them this specific way. And now it's like, man, something is happening to make me have to change the way that I'm doing. And I don't want to do it. And because people don't pivot quick enough, sometimes now you're literally completely out of business, right? You know what I mean? And so what is that mindset that maybe we as entrepreneurs need to have when we experience our pivot, our time of pivot, right? That will help us to make it, sooner, from what you have experienced yourself.
You have to frame the situation differently. Like what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's almost like any clients that I've ever worked with when it comes to maybe like just health and wellness, for example. People abhor change. They don't like change. Change is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? And unfortunately, if they don't see the value of the outcome being greater than what they have to go through during the change process, they're not going to bite. They're not going to go into it. And what I would say for entrepreneurs is it's much the same thing. If you're looking at this challenge or this uncontrollable, unforeseen thing like the pandemic, for instance, that comes along that changes the landscape and that changes everything, you have to look at that as an opportunity. You have to reframe it as an opportunity, because if you
That's
don't,
good.
it's always going to be in the frame of, this is happening to me. Right. And if it's always, this is happening to me, then that's what it will continue to be. And instead of, what am I going to learn from this situation? What is the opportunity to learn and evolve to overcome this?
Right.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of folks miss the mark, is because they don't take the time to sit back, take 3 deep breaths, and go, what am I going to get out of this? This is a lesson that's being presented to me, right? And out of this lesson, how do I become better as a result? You know, I think far too often, and I mean, it's not everybody, but I think far too often it's always a situation of, this is not fair, or this thing is happening to me. And then I can point the fingers, anywhere at anybody or any particular thing, and say, that's why it happened. Like, for instance, for me, my gym was not growing back to where it wanted to go. Right now, I can sit here and say that the pandemic completely did that to me. Right. When in essence, that had a part in it. I was unable to find that secret mechanism that allowed me to navigate those waters to bring it back to where it needed to be. So it was outside of my skill set to do that. I feel that I could never put my finger completely on that. It wasn't lack of trying, but I couldn't put my finger on that in a timely enough fashion to go, okay, we have time to get this back where it is. Financially, we can do this. We can wait a little bit longer. Or do I go, well, this is happening now. I don't have a choice here now. I have a choice to move over here and continue to serve people. This is where the attention is at.
Right.
Over here, this is not happening. So I need to get rid of this, learn the lesson from it, and apply it over here so it doesn't happen over here. And that's
right.
typically what I had to do.
Wow. That, I think that's very powerful, right? I want to ask this question based on that. I want to be the Lord's advocate, right? We don't advocate for the devil, here on the Line and Lambo podcast, right? So I'm gonna be the Lord's advocate. But because in one side, on one frame, I see how it's so powerful not to point fingers outward, right? Because now you in a sense paralyze yourself, because if you put everything on somebody outside of you, then now it's like you have no control over what can be done, right? And then I hear the statement of you saying, or I saw that I didn't have this specific skill set, right, to do this specific thing for the gym at that time. But you didn't allow that, right, to then also paralyze you. No. But you then pivoted to say, okay, but I can do this, right? And you leaned into that. And I think that's so powerful. I guess I want to ask you, right? How does somebody not get caught up on one or the other side, right? Because there's like 2 sides. I had one of my old pastors used to say there's 2 sides of the ditch, on the left and the right side. It don't matter what side you fall off of, they both are the ditch, right? You know what I'm saying? So you need to stay on the road, right? You know what I mean? And so how does somebody not how do they not on either side fall into that trap? Because as entrepreneurs, generally, especially as we build, and there is kind of this up and down process of life, right? There's these victories and then these kind of learning lessons or defeats, stepping stones, whatever you want to call them, right? But it's like, how quickly do you kind of are able to recover from, those ups and downs, right? And when you're up, right, stay level to not feel like you've arrived yet when you haven't. So it's like, how does somebody stay on that path to not let one or the other side, right, cause them to lose focus on, not completely downing themselves to where now they can't do anything because they feel like, well, I can't do this thing, or put it on other people or other situations to feel like, well, you're powerless, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does.
Okay, gotcha.
It does. And actually, there was a moment there in your explanation where you actually answered it.
Okay.
Because here's the thing that I truly believe in being an entrepreneur, or being a successful entrepreneur, is in order to stay in the middle of the road and not be in this ditch or this ditch, the focus should never be on you.
Okay.
It's not about you, right? If your
Okay.
focus is about those you serve, you stay straight and narrow, right? And the dividend that comes as a result of staying focused on your customer or the people that you serve, that's when it comes back to you 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x, whatever that is, right? And I can honestly say that for me, when I pivoted from the brick and mortar into the online format, my focus remained on how do I still continue to serve other people, right?
Wow.
Because I still had people from my gym that, although they couldn't go to my gym anymore, they are still training and working with me in this format because they still saw value in it. And they still saw that I was focused on them. So it's not about us.
Wow.
It should never be about it. If it's about us, then we're not providing value or impact. We're just trying to make money at that point.
Wow. That's a lesson. That
Yeah.
and you actually said it, right? You just saying that reminded me of what you said. You said in 2019 you are already started to try to look into the online stuff
Mhm.
because you wanted to be able to serve more people, right?
Right.
This was a way that you guys could serve more. So it's like when that thing came, it now, like you said, gave you more time to now focus on serving people more in a different way, right? In a different route. But the focus still remained on serving people more. And I love Hebrews 12:1, looking unto Jesus, right? Who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross and despised the shame. It's like the joy that was set before him is what helped him to push through, to persevere through. And we are the joy that was set before him. It wasn't him. It wasn't just like I'm focused on myself. And we all know in the garden, he said, Father, if it is possible, right? Let this cup pass, but not my will, your
Yep.
will be done. So his focus on others outside of himself is actually what helped him to persevere. And
Mhm.
so for us as entrepreneurs, what I'm hearing you saying is we have to take that same mind that Christ has,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
operate like that in our business lives, right? The
Well,
same way. It doesn't change.
it's a great analogy straight from scripture. I mean, we don't want any of these bad things to happen to us,
Yeah.
right? We don't want that. However, it's not about us.
Hmm. That's
It's,
so it's so deep.
it's not about us, and at the same time, it still involves us.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's it's all inclusive, 100%.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful, man. And to see how, and that's why I call it biblical entrepreneurship, right? To see these principles that are biblical and how they apply to our everyday life, yay, even our business life, right? Is so important because at the end of the day, God is still trying to reach us and reach people through us, right?
Mhm.
Through all these situations. I know you continue to grow and to build. And I want to ask you one question too, because don't just you're not just presenting yourself, for example, as just weight loss coach or a all you have personal trainer, for example, right? You present yourself as a lifestyle coach.
Yeah.
Why do you present yourself in that way of manner versus all these others that we hear, right? I would kind of want to know that as well.
Well, I liken it. It's literally differentiation.
Hmm.
Okay. The way that I explain it to a lot of people is let's go very surface level for a moment.
Hmm.
If all of our issues that related to health and fitness, weight loss, whatever the thing is, if it all came down to meal plans and workouts, then we would all be in great shape. And the reason that we would all be in great shape is because I can go to Google and type in meal plan, and there's going to
Hmm.
be a billion results readily available for me.
Hmm.
I can go to Google and I can go or YouTube and I can Google workout routine. And again, a million to a billion results are going to come in. We live in a time that really negates excuse. Okay.
Mm.
But here's the issue with the human condition.
Hmm.
It's not about those things. It's about our habits and behaviors.
Hmm.
The habits and behaviors that we have in our lifestyle keep us from being successful in almost any endeavor. It's the learned behaviors that we have and that we've set in place that we think define us without actually realizing that that too was a learned behavior. So like if I wanted to learn to eat healthy, that's a learned behavior. If I wanted to learn how to run better, that's a learned behavior. Like, I mean, honestly, none of us popped out of the womb eating Oreos and Ruffles chips and nachos, right? We learned how to do that.
Right.
So what I look for and what I help people realize is the true obstacles that stand in their way from actually seeing the freedom in whatever venture they're seeking. And literally, they're the obstacle. Their very habits, their behaviors, their environment, what they surround themselves with, the way they frame and perceive things. These are all things that prevent almost any of us from being successful in whatever endeavor we undertake. It has nothing to do with the surface level stuff because our pain, it lies a lot deeper.
Right. Yeah. Right. That makes a lot of sense, right? Because at the end, like you say, it's so readily available that excuses can't be there. So it has to be something that's deeper than the surface, right? That keeps us from accomplishing whatever it is that we want to set our mind to accomplish. And how much of that, because you started and you've been working for years, right? Helping individuals physically, right? With their lifestyle and overcoming in that area. How did you see that being used when you transitioned to now help people from a standpoint of sales?
So it's kind of the same thing. It's literally, it all goes, all right, think about sales. Sales is an emotional experience, and a lot of people don't understand.
Very, yeah.
But there's kind of like, there's two people that are coming from two different places. And the customer is going to buy based on emotion. And they're going to buy from an emotional state, and then they're going to validate later with logic. Most salespeople approach their customer from a position of logic and then try to transition to emotion. So they cross paths. They're never on the same page a lot of times. Right? So if you're in a position of sales and you're actually listening and you're asking, thought-provoking questions, if you're asking questions that disrupt your and not in a negative way, mind you, but disrupt your customer or client's emotions to get them think about what the impact that their decision is going to have today if they don't act either this way or that way, gets them to really think about, okay, I thought my problem was this big.
Right.
And
when in actuality, it may be that big, right? The truth is they may be underestimating the actual how big the problem is too, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, let's just take weight loss, for instance. I mean, if you have somebody that's in, let's say their 40s or 50s or 60s, and let's say they're, 50, 100 pounds overweight and they're on medication, right? Like there's a lot of things to take into account here, but our mindset, that person's mindset, maybe just, I need to lose a few pounds. I get out of breath when I go upstairs. But they're not really understanding that their habits and behaviors have led them to a position where, yes, you're out of breath when you go upstairs, but you're also thinking that your blood pressure is normal just because you're on medication. So that becomes your norm, right? Or that your cholesterol is in check because you're on medication. Instead of, hey, I could come off of both of these perhaps if I was to get a few of these other things into alignment, and then there's the value, there's the impact, right? It's not that surface level, I want to look good for the wedding. Not that surface level, I want to be able to take my shirt off at the beach. It's, I want to be able to do all of those things and still be here an extra 10 years for my children, my grandchildren, my family. That's where you create the impact.
Wow. So it's like as entrepreneurs, as those who are involved in sales, and I mean, as entrepreneurs, especially when we're starting off, all of us are involved in sales, right?
Mhm.
Because whatever product or service we have, we are the sales team.
True.
So, this is important for all of us to hear, what Mr. Shane is telling us right here. And what I'm hearing you say is that we have to really dig deeper to understand more of the why or the payoff for our customers beyond just the general surface level stuff that are, I guess, the cliche, right? I want to lose a couple pounds, look better, etc. Like, no, what is the depth of the issue that they are facing if they don't handle this thing right now, right? What on the other side is the huge payoff if they handle it right on the other side. And it's not just that I look better on the beach, it's do you want to be able to actually play baseball with your son in a couple years when he moves from T-ball to pitcher machine to because you can do that, right? If you handle this right now. If you don't, the best you can do is coaching from the sideline, right? Total different experience, right? You know what I mean? Like, but that's a emotional appeal, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like you say, it really shows how important we have to be thinking. We have to put our mindset on the person, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And really dig and say what is important to them. And I guess my question is, how do we then find out what's important to an individual that we're dealing with when they are responding to us with the surface level?
They're responding to you on the surface level because we're asking service level questions.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Help me. Help me.
It begins here. And here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of your clients and your customers, uh, what is the favorite thing that people like to talk about? Themselves.
Themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. They like to talk about themselves, their jobs, their family, their kids, their grandkids, their
Okay.
hobbies, all the above. 9 times out of 10, your customer or your client is going to give you all the ammunition you need by just talking about themselves to help you formulate questions. So it's really, is the training that you have in sales, for instance, is it based in like conversational awareness, emotional intelligence skills, psychology based methodologies and stuff that surround the conversation? Like, there's all kinds of different things that you can have in your toolkit so that you can better serve your customer. The biggest one at the end of the day is being able to listen to what's being said. And when you hear something, right? For instance, if I hear one of my clients that's coming in as a lifestyle coach client, if they come in as a client under that and they want to lose weight, for instance, I want to know as much about them as possible, right? So, what is your schedule like? Are you telling me you don't have enough time in the day to get things done? What does your schedule really look like? What are you doing day to day? Typically people say I eat fairly healthy. Really? Well, tell me what that looks like for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just basically, give me like what I basically want to hear. Salad, I eat a chicken, broccoli, rice, all the things, right? Okay. Do you mind if we dive into that a little further? Absolutely. Let's go down a trip down memory lane for just a moment. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Have you had lunch today? Sure. What'd you have for lunch? And they'll tell me. Great. Go back a little bit further. What'd you have for breakfast today? And they'll tell me. I was like, okay, last question. We're just going to go back a little bit further. What was for dinner last night? And then all of a sudden, somewhere along the way, I don't want to tell you that one. That wasn't such a good choice, and it becomes, a sparring match, so to speak. But when I'm asking those disruptive questions and I'm able to face the fact that their choices are not what they are saying they are, that value bridge is growing, right? It's not so much I have a headache and I need an aspirin. It's I have a migraine and I need to shut everything down and reassess. Right? So what does that do for you? If you're in a position of sales, that actually draws your customer closer to you as a solution to their problem.
Mm.
right? Because you're saying things that are different. I mean, let's be honest. Most
Mm.
personal trainers, coaches, etc., are going to sit here and talk about their program, talk about meal plans, talk about workouts. Like, if I say that to you, every coach down the street is saying the exact same thing.
Mm.
It doesn't serve you any better. Now,
Right.
imagine if you're selling a coaching program that, say, is a high ticket program because you are putting so much more into working with this person one on one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is going to set you apart from Coach Joe down the street that is, selling his program for $49 and you're over here selling it for $4.99?
Mm-hmm.
It's all a matter of getting to the root, getting to the heart, listening,
Mm.
and separating yourself and drawing your customer closer to you so you can serve them better. Because if you don't know these
Mm.
things, you can't serve them.
Mm. Gotcha. So this value bridge that you're building is really actually helping you to know the individual better. And because you know the individual better, that is one of the things that connects that individual to you. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say?
It
Okay.
all kind of
Gotcha.
falls in, a lot of folks say, sales is about rapport building, it's about building trust, it's about all
Uh-huh.
these things. All of that is intertwined into listening to your client, your customer,
Mm.
asking those, thought provoking or even probing questions to really get to the heart of the matter,
Mm.
where the real issue resides,
Mm.
and then
Mm.
let's acknowledge that issue. Let's see it as a real thing because what you thought was this problem is literally now this problem. Are you
Mm.
feel confident that you can get yourself through that now that you see it all?
Right.
The answer is invariably going to be, I don't want to deal with all that. I'm
Mm.
going to need you to help me deal with that.
Mm. Got you. It makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That actually it makes me think about a lot of times when, and I'm sure other people that are listening have had these experiences, especially if you shared your faith at all with individuals, especially people who've left the church, right? Maybe they say they haven't left Christianity per se. Maybe they just left that specific church they're a part of, or things like that. And a lot of times you find they have issues with the church, but when you start to ask and talk to them and kind of find out the root, you really find that the issue is not with God, and the issue is not even necessarily with the church per se or the Bible, right? A lot of times it's like, okay, it's a unresolved issue with a specific person or a family member or the way God was presented to them, or like you really get to the depth of, okay, this is the real issue, right? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times what we're doing in our businesses, we have products, we have services that truly can impact people, that truly can help people and change lives, but we're not actually first finding out what the real issue is in order to attach the service and the product we have to the real issue. You know
Yep.
what I mean? And since we aren't doing that, it's causing this trust between, right? Because we're still saying the same thing, like you say, that Joe Blow down the street is saying, right? And I don't want, Joe Blow or Kevin or Sammy or the various, doesn't matter, right? Because Joe ain't the only person saying the same thing, right? You got all these people saying the same thing, and we need to differentiate ourselves, like you're saying. And this value bridge, can you kind of break that down, right? Why do you call it a value bridge? Because that's the first time I've heard that term used before.
So when you come to me, there's a reason for that, right?
Okay.
Whether it's you're seeking like weight loss or lifestyle coaching, or you're seeking to increase your sales skills, right?
Uh-huh.
So when you come to me, you're in your current state. Okay. This current state is where your obstacle resides. This is
All
where
right.
your pain lives.
Mm-hmm.
You have this in your head, this vision of this future state of you that doesn't have that anymore.
Mm.
They're both islands. I have to get you from here to there.
I like it. Okay.
And that could be a short trip, which doesn't have a whole lot of value to it because I can swim that. But if it's this long bridge and I got to swim this long, chasm of water to get to that other place where I want to be, I'm going to
Got
need
you.
some help.
Okay. So I'm learning. I'm learning. Okay, so I need to be helping people first and foremost recognize where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be helping them recognize the place they want to be, right? So first of all, show that there are two completely different islands, and you're not on both of them at the same time. First of
Right.
all, and then I have to start building this value bridge, and this value bridge, this is what I'm hearing, is me building the value that I'm able to provide that's going to get them from one island to the next.
Yep. Well, it's two-pronged.
Okay, got correct me.
Okay. So one, you're right about one. The other
Okay.
one is getting them to understand that their problem isn't just this. Their problem involves these things because we're really getting
Okay,
to the root of the matter. So
got you.
the problem isn't weight loss. The problem is weight loss plus I don't know how to set boundaries for myself. I sacrifice anything that I do for me to take sure I take care of others, which is noble, but I need to take care of me. You know,
Got
the
you.
obstacle is I don't know when to tell my boss no from working overtime every single day of the week that I'm not available on certain days because I have to take care of me. Like these are just some examples
Right.
of where the impact can be made because the obstacles
Got
are
you.
bigger than just the weight loss. We're not successful with weight loss because all these other things are happening. So
Got you. Man, that's good. Look, somebody's listening right now, whoever's listening to this podcast, you need to get better at sales. Okay. If you're not connecting with the sales meta, because what you're already providing right now is like fire and very valuable and very thought-provoking. So, I really hope that you guys link in with Shane, man, so that we can all get ourselves better. And it's important because guess what? We all have something that God has given us that He has purposed for us to do. But guess what? We gotta be, He gave people talents, right? And they had to grow those talents, right? They had to put them to the exchanges. A part of them putting it to the exchanges could be a part of us becoming better at sales, right? Because guess what? We can't get this thing that's going to impact these people in the way it needs to impact them if we can't show them, right? We can't build this value bridge for them. Like, how are we going to do that, right? So you need to be locking in, right? And we're coming to a close, but can you tell us a little bit more about the sales meta, right? And all the things that you provide as a part of that service to help individuals get better in their sales approach.
yeah, I mean, it really breaks down. It's pretty simple in approach, but it breaks down to just doing a simple sales review. So most people either record their sales, via Zoom, via phone, or in person, or whatever the case may be. So doing an actual review of a sales consultation, sales call, whatever you call it, allows me to be able to break down and make an assessment of what your current skill and acumen is in the arena. And then from that point, it's like, okay, let's determine what those areas of improvement are. And then let's set up the coaching and the curriculum, if you will, to improve those. Right. And then it's another review process. And then we move forward. So it's always going to be a review, an assessment, education and training, and then, a conclusion.
I like that. So it's really almost like it's building out a custom for the individual based on where they need help at, what they may need more work on, etc. That's pretty dope. That's really, really dope. I really like that. You know what I mean?
I think one of the drawbacks that, and not to throw off in any other sales agencies, there's a ton of us out there that do different things, but a lot of coaching mastermind groups and stuff still operate from a group setting of like tons of people. And your business, my business, the next person's business, it's like weight loss. Everybody's very individual. They have their own unique needs. So that's I typically work with 10 clients at a time and no more. And that's because my bandwidth only allows me to work with them in those individual unique ways in that fashion. So
Right. No, and that's important. And I think, like you say, we all are different and have different needs. And so it's important that we have time, right, to be able to kind of address those. And even by you doing that, you're showing an example for us, right, who need to be better at setting boundaries, right, and not overextending ourselves. You're coaching us right there by not overextending yourself too. So,
Nope.
so that's awesome, man. Like, man, Shane, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. I do want you to close us out, right? I'm going to take a second just to talk about our Engineer Your Vision challenge that we have coming up. But after that, I would like you to close us out. I've heard you say over and over again that we have to listen. We have to listen. We have to be listening, right? Help us. What are some things that we can do, some tips that will help us to be better listeners? If you can close us out with that after we talk about the Engineer Your Vision challenge. Because if it's one thing I've seen over the years, being an entrepreneur and having so many conversations with different entrepreneurs, is a lot of time we actually have no direction, right? Like we literally don't know where we're going, and that's why we can't get anything done. It's like we're trying to accomplish this elusive goal, but that we have for our life, but because we don't have a clear focus, we can't even put a plan together to accomplish the vision, right? And so if you're hearing that, you're saying, man, that's me. That's the position that I'm in. I'm spinning my wheels. I'm doing many things, but I have no clear direction and I haven't gotten anywhere. Look, I want to tell you about our Engineer Your Vision challenge, because I understand what that's like. I felt like I call it the treadmill business plan, right? To where you're super busy, but you're going nowhere, right? But the scriptures tells us, write the vision, make it plain, that he may run that reads it, right? And as soon as you have a clear, defined vision, then you can actually engineer a plan step by step so you can accomplish that thing that God has placed on your heart. So take the challenge. Go to engineeryourvision.com and sign up for the challenge today. Shane, can you just close us out with, give us some tips, right, of how can we be better listeners as far as business owners, and especially in terms of trying to be better in our sales?
If there's one statement that I can make that should sum this up is, in this day and age, be genuine. Be genuine in the fact that you're trying to create value and impact in another's life. All great things will come from that. If your focus stays on making sure that you make someone else's day, week, month, moment, or life better in some regard than you've served, that has a compound effect. Who was it? Gary Vaynerchuk. I think he wrote a book called Jab, Jab, Hook. Right. Okay. And think of it this way: give, 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 and then ask. Provide value, provide mentorship, provide guidance, provide impact. And then when it comes time for you to ask for what it is that you seek, it'll be given unto you tenfold. We have to stay focused on just making sure that we are framing what we do from a point of serving other people.
I love it. I love it. I know my man Jose always says, I'm gonna give 10 times before I ask for anything. And I'm picking up what you're putting down right there, and saying that if we have that focus, right, it's going to inform not just our sales life, right? It's going to inform every aspect of our life, right? And at the end of the day, that's the point, right? God is trying to not just make us be better business people. He's trying to help us to be better individuals, to be a service for his glory and for his honor, right? And that means our characters completely change, which affects every area of our life, right? You know, and so if we love people, if we serve people, it's going to translate to all the other parts of our life, man. And that's what we're starting to seek to do as biblical entrepreneurs. So, Shane, I really appreciate you for coming and jumping on the podcast, man, and sharing your level of expertise, telling us about your story. How can people get in contact with you, right? Because I know some people are going to hit you up about sales because it's obvious that you have a great command of it, right? Like you're not just out here talking, but you know what you're talking about. So how can people get in touch with you from with lifestyle coaching, or also with the sales training and program that you have as well?
So as far as the lifestyle coaching goes, I mean, you can go to I have a website for that, which is just my name, ShaneArnott.com. Or you can send me an email there at Shane@ShaneArnott.com. And then as far as the sales meta and the sales coaching, the sales meta, you can book, a discovery call with me directly through the website there. Or you can send me an email at Shane@thesalesmeta.com, and then we can take it from there. I keep the approach very simple. I keep it personalized because I do work with such a small group of people. You will be talking to me personally. So it won't be a virtual assistant or anybody else. My wife may answer message, but she talks about this stuff better than I do. So yeah, it's very simple. I love to have the conversations. I love to get to know the people that I'm working with, what their unique business needs are, and then we can just go from there.
That's awesome, man. Well, I thank you so much. I really pray that you guys get locked in with Shane and his wife to be able to talk with them and increase your sales. Because like I say, right, we want to have an impact on the world. And so if you want to find us at Line and Lambo, you know that we're everywhere, every streaming platform, wherever you listen to your podcast at, right? Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon.